I'm not going to say the same thing I always say. I'm not
Welcome
saying
back to the Here for the Proof. Welcome back to the Here for the Truth
here
podcast.
for the proof.
Here for the proof. Here for the truth. Here for the proof. Here for the Truth podcast. My name is Yerasimos, and as always, I got my co-host with me, Joel Rafidi.
You know what's funny? I was listening back to a podcast. Is like in the intro, like Namakula, the voiceover artist, says, "You are now listening to Here for the Truth, hosted by Joel Rafidi and Yerasimos." And I come straight in. Welcome to Here for the Truth, hosted by Joel Rafidi and Yerasimos.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about that, I think,
whatever. When you contemplate like who you're speaking to when you record these podcasts or in this intro, like who are you talking to? Like who comes to mind?
I don't know. I mean, you do more of the intros, like I mean, I just feel like there are people out there that are listening and I'm just talking like, hey,
It's interesting to consider. I feel like I'll get like a general gist of like the archetype of the listener,
Yeah. Speaking of, I love meeting and connecting with our listeners. This is the one thing I love about going to these in-person events like Confluence, and we got Music and Sky coming up June 20th and 24th through 24th in Mendocino County, Mendocino, California. Joel's going to be there. We're going to be on stage together talking for the first time ever. Joel's also going to be performing new hip hop from his new album he hasn't released yet. He's going to be sharing that with the Music and Sky audience. I can't wait. The tracks are dope. And I can't wait to meet more people that like are listeners of the podcast and hang out. Like, it makes me so happy when I like come across someone that's like, oh my God, like Here for the Truth. I love your podcast. Like, it just, because I think sometimes, and we've talked about this, Joel, like we're sitting here and like, I get up, I'm in my chair in my room and you're in your room and we're just having this conversation. And I forget that like, oh, this is going out to thousands of people and thousands of people are listening to this, So it's, I don't know.
I love
cool.
it, man. And that's the experience I'm looking forward to having at Music and Sky. I haven't really had that yet, that in-person affirmation of, oh, there's real people that listen to the podcast and like, appreciate it and stuff like that. So I'm really looking forward to Music and Sky, and having that experience as well, because I know you've had that a lot.
Yeah, it's cool. And if you're listening, we have the link in our show notes to get tickets and you get 10% off. But like, come take a road trip. If you're in the area, like come hang out. It's so freaking cool. I mean, you got all the peeps from other, our friends and colleagues. Obviously Mike Winter and his crew helped putting it on. Alex Zek, our friend. He's going to be there. And we got like, I don't know what, maybe 10 plus previous podcast guests.
Melissa Sell, Edith Chan.
Bear Lando. I'm gonna beat Bear for the first time. Yeah. Like I can't wait.
Yeah, he might bear it all.
Yeah. Oh my God. We got dad jokes coming over here from Joel Rafidi. But yeah, I mean, look at the poster. I mean, we've been posting on like social media and things, and like it's such a great crew. And the other thing, and also it's family friendly. I don't know if anyone was aware of that. It's a family friendly event. You bring your kids. There's going to be this whole luminary village with like children's programming. There's like a river that runs through the campgrounds where you could bring floaties and just kind of hang out in the river. It's going to be a community oriented event also. So like there's going to be a sign up sheet where for 15 minutes, if you want to like sing a song, if you want to say a poem, if you want to talk about something you're passionate about, you get stage time. Like it's going to be really cool. Like it's going to be different than some of the previous events. And I think, it's going to be cool with the families there. And I'm excited for Joel and his family to be there. And, I love Mike, Matt, and Owen, what they've created. It's such a great event. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome, man. Guys, enjoy this episode.
You are now listening to the Here for the Truth podcast, hosted by Joel Rafidi and Yerasimos.
Carey Wedler is a content creator who focuses on breaking through authoritarian programming to promote peace, freedom, decentralization, and the evolution of consciousness. She previously worked as a journalist and editor-in-chief for the now-banned Anti-Media, an independent news organization. She takes special interest in the intersection of spirituality, self-ownership, internally and externally, and voluntaryism as a path forward for humanity. Carey, thanks for being here for the truth.
Thanks for having me. Sorry, I got a fly in my face.
No worries.
No worries.
Spirituality, I got
No, absolute pleasure to have you here. One way we always like to kick off these podcasts, particularly with first-time guests, is we'd love to dive deep into your personal hero's journey. So, like, I guess whatever comes up in terms of the major rites of passage, those massive catalyzing transitory moments that lead us down a certain path.
Yeah, let's go. So I grew up very much a liberal progressive in Los Angeles. And it was really rooted in being anti-war. Like, I was coming of age during the Iraq War and Afghanistan, and it just it felt very wrong to me. And the progressives were opposed to that. Like, that violence is not good, right? Like, of course, if we talk about the inherent violence of the state, that doesn't quite register. But at the time, it was from a principled anti-war perspective. And I then came to support Barack Obama, who was not in any way anti-war with any principle, but he had the right rhetoric. So I loved Barack Obama. That was a big step in my journey. And it turned out to be very essential because it was his lack of adherence to those principles that really started me down my path. So when I started paying attention and I saw that he had continued all the wars, he was the drone king, he was by no measure of anything principled or standing by any progressive principles, that was the first chink in the armor of the programming. And that got me questioning him as a politician. And then shortly after, I found Ron Paul, who has been a big person for a lot of people on this path. And sure enough, he got me going down toward a path of freedom, but I was still a constitutionalist. I actually studied constitutional history in college. I thought I wanted to be a constitutional lawyer because I think there are a lot of good ideas in the Constitution, but in practice, it doesn't quite preserve those ideas or those virtues and values. So first, it was Ron Paul, and I saw what the media did to him. Obviously, I don't know if anyone remembers the 2012 election, but they really blacked him out. He had no coverage despite his popularity. And it was after that I started to realize, I'm not sure this is ever going to work. I think there's enough concentrated power here that if there's someone who's truly a threat to the system, they will get no power. And you see that even with someone like Bernie Sanders, who I have made videos about him, not a supporter, believe his entire ideology and philosophy is flawed, if not very problematic, very dangerous, but he just uses rhetoric against the system and the media treated him, pretty negatively. So with someone like Ron Paul, who at the time I believed was, very much a threat to the system, I still think his ideas are, but his threat was not by being in Congress, right? It's not like he accomplished much in Congress. His threat was his ideas, and those ideas got to me. And that then evolved toward way beyond the Constitution. I started getting into Lysander Spooner, the abolitionist anarchist from the 19th century. I had some personal experiences with police that helped me see the inherent violence of the system. And it all kind of started snowballing. And I ended up making a video where I blowtorched my Obama shirt. This is actually a few years after I stopped supporting him. But I was like, wait, I still have that shirt. That would be fun. So I did it, and that was my first big viral video. And then that connected me to the Anti-Media, which was a growing independent news organization at the time. Both of the founders were actually also inspired by Ron Paul and then went down the voluntarist, no government path at all on a philosophical basis. And I joined them in 2014. I became editor-in-chief. We were reaching a lot of people, not to brag, but we are reaching millions of people every week with all of the values and all of the news stories that I think your audience cares about and is aware of. We partnered with the Free Thought Project. I'm sure some people have heard of them.
Yeah.
So we had our circle going, and we had quite a lot of reach. And shortly after the 2018 midterms, the anti-Russia hysteria was on high, and Facebook had partnered with the Atlantic Council, which is an offshoot, I think, of NATO, I want to say. And they had taken up the mantle of, we have to protect the internet from disinformation. And right before the midterms, they banned us for no reason, no stated reason. And just a few hours later, they banned us from Facebook. And then a few hours later, they banned us from Twitter, and they banned my personal account too. And then that was it. Just years of my life gone. And I find that interesting because people are very aware of censorship now, but there's this general narrative that it started against conservatives in 2020, and that absolutely not. It started before then. We were banned just a couple months after Alex Jones was first banned. So we were in the first wave of kind of testing the waters, I think, of just will people tolerate this? And they did. It wasn't. And they started with people who were, I'm not an Alex Jones supporter, but he definitely says things that are subversive and outside the the allowable opinion, and so did we. We never had any Russian involvement or anything. I was very meticulous of like, no, we don't use official news sources. We do not cite RT unless they're citing a Russian official, because that seems like, okay, that's the official statement. But we are so meticulous, and that was a big heartbreak for me. So I'm still recovering, and it's been like 6 years, but I still make my videos, and I'm still passionate about all these things. But it's taken on, especially with the loss of anti-media, it's taken on a much more personal inner work tone as well. That's become so essential to me, because I don't think you can separate external freedom from the internal. And that's it. I'm done. That's the end of it.
No, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, we've had Jason Bassler on here previously, and he that devastated him, that initial blow. Like he still feels those scars to today. Did you go down the same time as him? Was that like the same kind
day? It was the same day.
It's like a well-coordinated attack.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, the thing is, we'll never have proof of exactly what happened, because they're not going to tell us that. And even with the Twitter files, we didn't come up. They didn't mention that. And I spoke to Matt Taibbi right after the bans, he was at Rolling Stone at the time, but I had a phone call with him, and he was awesome. But it just didn't come up in the Twitter files. So I was curious about that. But we know something happened, and we know something was coordinated. And we had a representative at Facebook at the time, because we were a big page. We had like something around 2.5 million followers. And we messaged our representative at Facebook, and she was like, oh yeah, we'll put you at the top of the pile for your appeal. We'll get back to you. And after that, never heard from her again, ghosted. Nothing ever restored. I've heard from one of our founders that he tried to get our Twitter account back when Elon Musk took over, and no, that was denied too. So even in the age of a free speech on Twitter, apparently not for us.
Yeah, people don't understand, like, in the digital age, like, your livelihood, depends on that. I mean, when you have we have an audience of millions of people, and you're doing what you're doing, and you're offering what you're offering, like, when that just gets cut away, like, the impact that it has, and just people aren't aware of it because it's not showing up on the news. They're not like,
exactly,
such is happening, so they have no clue.
Right. And when it was reported on in the mainstream, it was like, oh, these fringe pages got banned in the disinformation fight. And even if they had been honest, even if they had said, well, this anti-war, anti-establishment, like pro-peace, we never said we were, quote, anarchists, but, that was obviously the underlying philosophy in our op-eds. But even if they had said that, the tone I got in Los Angeles was like, well, too bad. If some innocent people have to get hurt in this scary fight against the Russians, well, that's what it is. Sucks for them, but I feel safer knowing that they're banning people who might be dangerous.
Yeah. And not just because of the loss of, the information that people are going to be provided with, but because, like, there's years of creativity that's been dedicated to building this thing. It becomes like a child that you've been nurturing. Yeah. It's like this creative passion and project. And it's like, where did all that go? That hits deep on a personal level even.
It sure did. It was, I remember being in denial when it happened. I was texting one of our founders, their two co-founders. And I was like, we're going to get it back. No way. This is a glitch. Yeah, all right. Because we'd never even had like a ding on our whatever, or the tabs they keep on you for violations. We'd never, not one. So it took me a while to even accept that we weren't getting it back. And it was, Jason and I have talked about this a lot, just how devastating it is, because we do this, we weren't in this for the money. Obviously, like, if you have an independent news organization, if you have a podcast, you're doing this because you care. And there are, of course, people who are in it for the money and but we weren't like that. We did it because we actually cared, and we were deeply moved by what we saw going on in the world. And we felt that we had to say something. Yeah. So it was very heartbreaking, and it's just a different era. Jason and I talk about that a lot. Like, the internet is not that way anymore. Like, you can't build that big of a following that quickly saying the things that we're saying. It's just, the algorithms don't work like that anymore.
Yeah, the machine has changed completely since that time,
also,
for sure.
And also now, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like now even trying to get in touch with a person to communicate with on these like YouTube or Instagram, like, you just can't. It's just like people lose their Instagram accounts and there's nothing they can do. There's not even a person they can get on the phone. I had this question because I'm curious. I grew up on the East Coast, and I grew up someone that would consider myself or identify more as liberal, progressive, etc. Especially living in New York City. Like, as you became more aware of certain things happening, like, and you're well spoken, you speak your opinions. Like, how was that within family, within friends? Like, as you were being out there and then creating videos, like, what was the pushback? What was the dialogue that was happening?
I definitely lost some friends. But I also I was very reactive at that time, because I think there's a phase when you first start paying attention where like there's very justified rage. Like, what? How is this possible? How is this real? And like you look around and no one cares. They're unaffected. And there was a lot of anger, and I definitely mistakenly put that on some friends who disagreed with me. So I can't just blame them for being like asleep zombies. Like I definitely no one wants to be spoken to that way. And I didn't have a lot of emotional regulation at the time. Like you can go watch my older videos and it's like, yikes, that girl is going through something.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like that's part of my evolution. But I will say my family, like to this day, like they're supportive. I haven't quite gotten them down the anarchy road, but they get it and they support me and they love my videos. So they never disowned me or anything like that. I'm very grateful for that, because I know a lot of people go through that where their families just shun them for having the unallowed opinions.
I remember coming across your videos years ago, and like, I was like, she does not fuck around, you know? And just the creative aspect of it. Like, I loved your videos, you know?
Thank you.
And then like my Instagram page, like I think I followed you on my old Instagram page, and then that got like shadow banned. I created a new one, and then I like realized I didn't follow you on it. And I was like, what's I haven't seen your videos anymore. And then we came across each other, mutual friends. So it's just really, really cool to see that, you know?
Thank you. And the thing is too, like, I love to make those videos. I've been a little inactive recently for family, personal reasons, but I love to make them. Like, that's part of the reason I do it. Yes, I care. And yes, I think it really matters, but that's a creative outlet for me. I love to do it, like to create something out of nothing and to get to talk about things I'm passionate about and that I care about, that I feel matter to the world. Like, it was the same thing for anti-media. I'm a writer. To get to write about those things, and like give all of my nonviolent force to that. I love it. So I don't intend to stop. I'm sort of recharging right now, but I think my biggest pivot has just been I try to be a little less reactive. I mean, you could watch my videos. I'm still very sassy, and there's definitely some tude there, but I feel like my face grimaces a little less. Like if you go watch my early videos, I'm like very much gripped in my reactivity about it. And again, that's justified and it's fair, but it's become very apparent to me that like for the world and for your own well-being, you can't stay there.
Yeah, and don't lose the tutor, don't lose the sass. Like it's a necessary weapon at the same time.
Yeah, and it's a part of who you are, you know.
Yeah.
And I think like as we evolve and as we integrate more of who we are, like we can include all of it,
right?
In ways,
Exactly.
and I think in more conscious ways too, with how we communicate. And I think that's a huge problem we see in the world today, or we have seen for a long time, and especially in social media, just observing how people communicate to one another. Like, how is anything going to get accomplished? Like, what's even the point of engaging in these kinds of dialogues when you know everyone's just screaming at each other?
Right. And to me, it's like that just mirrors the current paradigm we're trying to challenge. Like this system is fueled by that rage, by that reactivity. That's how they get you. But I hate using the term they, but that's how people in power maintain their stranglehold on you. I don't want to say it's intentional. I think there are definitely people who know what they're doing, but there is if people are angry, and under that is fear, because I think that's really at the root of it, whether you have our opinions or you're locked into the system, underneath that anger is terror. There's what's going to happen to me? I don't feel okay. I need somebody to help me and save me and fix it. And yes, people of our opinions tend to be a little more self-starter, they have more autonomy to how they view the solutions, but it's still driven by fear and anger. And again, those aren't bad things. That's part of being human. But for me, it's let's take it out of the driver's seat though, because the more reactive you are, the more susceptible you are. And the more you're putting that energy back out into the system. So if I'm talking to a person one-on-one, like I used to when I was younger, and I scream at them and I call them ignorant and stupid, that's just going to drive them deeper into their opinion. So it's not really solutions oriented. It's just perpetuating the problem on so many levels.
Yeah. What is it that you've, I guess, come to learn about your own internal makeup that makes you so magnetized or drawn towards this arena, understanding things on the political level, being freedom oriented, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, it's interesting. I think there's two pieces to that. And one that I've always been attracted to revolution and rebellion and dissent my whole life. Even when I was in, maybe not 5 years old, but in high school, I started being really drawn to the beat poets, for example, who were in the 50s they were bucking against the system and the trend. Do I agree with everything they said? No. But the attitude was very much no, don't tell me what to do. I'm going to do things my way. And it's funny because that's why I liked Barack Obama, which is like so embarrassing, like put a shame bag over my head. But I was like, oh, he's a revolutionary. He's going to end the wars because Republicans are evil, and he's a good Democrat. And, like the spirit was there, but obviously the rationale was, the rationality was very much missing. But I studied history partly because I loved revolution, and so much of history is dissent, which is one of the reasons I'm very positive about the future. Is like, it's just human nature to rebel against unjust authority. Maybe not all of us, but there is always going to be a group of people who say, absolutely not, I'm not complying. So that's part of it. But then I also think, and this is where like the inner work comes in, is like everyone, I had difficulties in childhood. And I think the flavor of some of my difficulties really predispositioned me to want to speak out and be like, no, I'm not taking that. You're wrong. I'm not crazy. And I will continue to trust my own perception of reality. And I think that's the case for a lot of people who become active. They have childhood experiences, and it's like, it has nothing to do with the government. I mean, sometimes it does. This is where it gets really interesting, because I think this belief in the establishment and government is passed down in a way. Like, our parents give us their beliefs through their politics and their parenting styles. And then you get the educational system training you. And I'm going off on a tangent, but point being, like, that's all true.
Yeah.
But then there's also things that have absolutely nothing to do with the system. And they're just unique to being a human and growing up. It's hard. It's really hard to be human. And we get wired certain ways. And the way I was wired, I reached a point where I was like, no, I'm living in a world of propaganda and this isn't true. And I'm not going to shut up about it because somebody thinks I should.
Yeah. Love it. I wonder if you've got strong aquarium placements or something like that. Comes to mind as well.
I've got some Aries, I know that, which I think explains some of my attitude.
You know what's interesting? It's like back then when we were, I guess, like coming from a more, I guess, ignorant or immature place, like a Barack Obama or like a Bernie Sanders, like, it seems revolutionary. It seems like it's challenging the status quo. I remember as well at the same time thinking, oh, this is something different. But it's almost like they play on it, because we assume the status quo is like capitalism, and redundancy and everything being done the same way. And then they put out these characters like an Obama, and it appeals to younger generations as like a revolutionary thing.
Well, and also too, like the first Black president, I mean, that's a huge thing that plays into that as well. I mean, I remember I had taken a year off in 2008. I was backpacking around the globe, and I was in Costa Rica with like a bunch of other backpackers at a bar when they were announcing, like, during election day, and everyone, like, when he won, they were going crazy. I mean, I at that point I was like, oh, this is cool, like, you can believe in, or change you can believe in, or whatever the fucking slogan was, but very quickly you realize things. I was really into health at that point, and I remember like one of his first who was it that he made like Department of Agriculture head? It was like Tom Vilsack or someone who was just like entrenched in the system, like connected to Monsanto. And I was like, fuck this dude.
Right, exactly. All around. And it's funny you mentioned the term slogan, because that's what it was. And unfortunately, and I actually think this is something good about human nature, is we don't automatically assume we're being lied to. And that has a lot of potential for bad and for harm. But like, a lot of people take other people at their word. Yeah. And I no longer do that with politicians, but in general, it's like, well, if someone seems authentic and they're saying X, Y, Z, why would they be lying? And of course, you check their record and like, yeah, this person's lying. Maybe which had I done that, I wouldn't have supported Barack Obama. But it's interesting because I've gone down the Edward Bernays rabbit hole as like the father of modern propaganda. And there's this clip in a documentary. I've read his books and they're really, really interesting, but he's in a documentary called The Century of the Self. You've seen it?
Yeah, Adam Curtis.
Yeah, he makes great documentaries.
It's a great documentary.
Yeah, but there's this clip of Edward Bernays very late in life, and he had worked on the War Propaganda Commission for Woodrow Wilson in World War I. And that was his first big break. And looking back on it, he got to go to Paris for the signing of the Treaty of Versailles that ended the war. And he's like 90 something at this point, and he's referring back to what he calls the slogan. He was like, make the world safe for democracy. That was the big slogan. And like, maybe he believed it, maybe he didn't, but I found it interesting that he put it in those terms of like, it's a slogan. And yes, like, what else are you going to call it? But were they making the world safe for democracy? No. And is democracy the ideal? No. Like, there's so many falsehoods just in that statement, and like misrepresentations of history and the realities of government. But it was interesting that someone who created propaganda for the CIA, for like these major power players, looking back on his life, that's how he referred to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, propaganda ended up getting such a negative connotation that he did change it to like he's now known as like the father of
Public relations. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm sure I've mentioned this before, and I say it every time this comes up. But did you know that Mark Bernays Randolph, his great nephew, is the founder of Netflix, co-founder and former CEO of Netflix? So speaking of the timeline of propaganda continuing, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, and what's interesting too is if you read his books and you read his essays, he's very intelligent, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And he clearly, like, you look at what he did and he didn't have much of a moral compass, but it seems like he thought he did. Like the way he writes about his ideas and the way he thought he was using propaganda, he thought he was doing it in service of things like free speech and self-governance. And of course, like human status, which is, you know, the term for someone who believes in government. So like, I guess maybe it was authentic, unless he's lying in his books. Like there's so many layers of like, what did he mean and what were his intentions? But regardless of his intentions, what were the outcomes of what he did?
And I think also too, there are individuals that are in that, you know, realm of power where they just look down and they go, these plebs, they can't do things on their own. And so we have to guide them.
Yep.
No, we have to determine how society or whatever will unfold. You know, like we're intelligent, we're evolved. These people are not.
Right. And that was what he expressed in some of his books. And he thought that was a good thing. Like, not that they weren't involved, but it's like, well, we're going to be their shepherds. We know better than them. We're intelligent. We have this power. So we need to take care of them. Which is like, so, and that, as far as I can tell, that seems to be the persistent belief today that a lot of people believe.
I won't lie. Sometimes I look around at the masses and I think, yeah, they need a shepherd.
I mean, that's an interesting thing, because we can now segue into voluntarism and things like that. Like philosophically, I think it's amazing. But like, well, I guess first, I know we've had guests on before talking about voluntarism.
Yeah.
If you want to discuss, you know, what is voluntarism?
Yeah.
Why is it something that, you know, means a lot to you as a philosophy? But then, okay, looking at the state of the world and the state of consciousness of people in this world and their emotional intelligence and the state of their nervous systems, and like to be like, okay, yes, let's have no rulers and now go live life. Like,
right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we're not there on a consciousness level, but I think we could get there. I think it terrifies people to be like, let's just have no government, because they imagine it as like, well, tomorrow the government disappears and it's chaos. And it's like that movie, The Purge, and everyone's just doing what they want. And like, no, I don't think it would be like that, because most people behave morally because they were taught to, not because there's some authority keeping them in line. Maybe there's some people like that, and maybe they would go a little crazy, but I don't think that's the majority of people. But even so, I think like in terms of like, I don't want to say emotional maturity, that sounds condescending and I don't mean it that way, but in terms of like, well, what are people ready for? I don't think they're ready for that, because our whole lives, we are conditioned to believe that some authority outside ourselves needs to take care of us. And not even that it needs to, we're taught that that's empowerment. Like, well, you get to pick a leader. We're free. This is the peak of civilization. You get to vote. You get to check a box. And like, we are the government. That's something I talk a lot about in my videos, because it's just absolute nonsense. What do you mean we're the government? No, we're like millions of people. And there's this tiny little ruling class that believes they have a right to use violence. And you may not see that violence because you've been conditioned to think it's voting, but they're enforcing their laws through violence. You don't have a right to commit violence. Therefore, how can other people that you've chosen as leaders have that right? And I recommend Larkin Rose, if that sounds interesting to you. He's like the master of communicating this. But it's something that really, it takes time to deprogram. And some people get it right away. Some people are born this way. They're like, I always knew this authority thing was a lie. I didn't. I went to kindergarten and I thought I had to do everything they said. And I got pleasure from sitting up straight and being told I was a good girl and following the rules. So it took a lot of time for me to deprogram that. Even it's weird because I was also very attracted to like anti-authoritarianism from a very young age. But point being, like, these things are deeply ingrained with us. They're wired into us from a very young age. So it does take time to deprogram. And so like, for me, it's more of an evolution than a revolution. That's what I've experienced in myself. Like my rationale, like the way I view the world changed very quickly, but my emotional world, my inner world, that takes time. You have to change the pathways and change how you respond to yourself and the world. So my values will never change. I mean, never say never. I don't think I'm going to wake up tomorrow and be like, oh, vote for Joe Biden. But like, who knows? No, I'm not going to do that, I promise. But like, views change and evolve. I don't expect mine to in terms of voluntarism, but like I know that it's taken a long time for me to find peace within myself, and it's a lifelong practice.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't wake up all the time every day and I'm just at peace and nothing bothers me. Of course not. Like it's a process, and I think it's an essential one that goes alongside this evolution of the perception of government and freedom and what's possible and what's moral and, you know, what causes problems. Because you look at history and it's like, well, usually the common denominator is government. It's people in power who abuse power. And that's just as important to me now as the idea or the practice of like really coming to own yourself in an emotional way, like owning your body, owning your experiences, owning the feelings that arise, and like literally just loving yourself and caring for yourself, which is a cliche, but like it's a cliche because it's
true.
Important. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that stands out to me is like, you know, super positive and appealing on that side of the conversation is that it gives people the chance to actually feel reality properly and learn their own lessons. You know, if you think of government as like a safety net or a comforter, it's really something that kind of blurs reality and keeps people at arm's length from really evolving their consciousness and engaging in reality in new and different ways to feel better and to support themselves and to have healthy relationships. And it's like now it's like that responsibility is like a few steps away. And I think that causes so much dysfunction and deterioration, even just within the individual psyche.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I gave a talk on it, very similar. You can find it on YouTube. It was at the Greater Reset in January, not to like, you know, try to hype up my own talk, but I did talk about this in detail. And the reason I'm bringing it up is I think so much of people, like speaking of people's psyches, so much of this political power is amassed because people are afraid. Like, I don't want to feel this feeling. I feel scared. There's so much discomfort, like during COVID, after 9/11, people were losing it because they couldn't sit with the uncomfortable feelings. And uncomfortable is maybe understating it, like the terrifying feelings. They couldn't be with it. They couldn't deal with the uncertainty.
That's it. The uncertainty, not knowing.
Yeah.
I think that's such a big piece to so much. That like if you can't sit with that, if you're not comfortable with not knowing or uncertain or being uncertain, that's like you're gonna strive for like, oh, this person knows. This person's gonna tell me what's true or not. This person can help me.
Yeah, I need to return to back to the nest. I need to return back to the womb. I need to feel safe again, you know? And that's why it's like the terror is from being without a proverbial mummy and daddy figure. Like regardless of how old you are, like that's frightening for the majority of people to be out of the nest on your own in the wilderness, having to, you know, having no fallback.
Exactly. And then these politicians come in and they say, well, I have the answers. I know how to help you. I'll take care of it. Trust me. I'll do it. Give me this power. And it's funny because I watch I'm not currently watching them, but I've watched a lot of cult documentaries, and it's like the exact same mentality. It's the same energy. And you watch these people speak, whether it's politicians or like people who had cults, and something just feels off. And it makes me wonder like how disconnected so many of us are from our intuition, from like our highest, the observer in us, the one that's truly our essential nature. That like if we have to be disconnected from that if we fall for people like that. Because they're disconnected from it, as far as I can tell. They're tapped into something very creepy that is not their truest, purest, essential being.
Well, they prey on people's vulnerabilities, you know, politicians, cult leaders, etc., sociopaths, psychopaths. And I think what helps the person connect is not to say you need to get in touch with your inner psychopath or sociopath, but you can connect to the part of you like, because people want to look at themselves in the most positive light. Oh, I don't manipulate. I don't take advantage of people. I don't do that. I think the more you can be in touch with the part of you that can like lie, cheat, steal, do something shady, you can sniff it out in other people. You're like, yeah, I know that. I know that part. Yeah, I don't live in that part of me, but I know that part of me, and you ain't going to play me that way.
Exactly.
That's what I've found.
Yeah. I even think about like, during that 2020 era with like the Q phenomenon, and like there was a whole sect of people that were like, oh, Jasara and Asara, like we're going to be fucking supported and have all this wealth available to us consistently. You know? And meanwhile, they think they're freedom minded. Yeah. Like what is that urge to like want a handout or just to be want to give them something? And I even think about today and like the way some of the movement has evolved, like, oh, my birth certificate's worth $40 million. Like all this money is just kind of owed to me kind of thing. So it comes from that same place of like not wanting to properly, fully consciously engage with life and sustain oneself.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard. It's not easy work. And it feels easier to be like, well, somebody outside of myself is going to fix this for me. Like it's tempting. I get it. Like it's very scary to realize that no one's coming to save you.
Yeah.
And that you're responsible for your choices and what happened. You're not responsible for everything that happens to you, but you are responsible for how you react.
Yeah.
And for taking care of yourself. And that's hard to face.
Yeah. I even think this programming goes all the way back to like the Garden of Eden stories. Like, oh, I'm owed something. It was Eve and Adam that sinned, not me. Like the world's meant to be paradise. I'm meant to be owed everything. Like I'm kicked out of Eden. And like now, oh, damn it, I have to work. I have to deal with my life. I have to deal with relationships. There's all this blame that's projected externally. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it's so funny. Well, it's not funny. Like, it's just yikes. But like, it is very scary. But I tend to believe that it's way scarier to give your power away to other people with track records of being abusive and violating your rights and your liberties. And like, what's the long term of that? You look at human history and like, I don't need to like beat a dead horse with your audience, but like, again, the common denominator of the greatest harms, the greatest atrocities, people in power. And it really doesn't matter the style of government. This happens regardless. Like it could be a constitutional whatever. And yet like, what's that piece of paper done here? Really? People love to pay lip service to it. But like what happened in Congress? Didn't they just pass a massive surveillance bill? Like, I think it just happened again, like for the nth time. So what, like, it doesn't really matter what, quote, constraints you put on the state. This is the nature of the state. So to me, it's like, I think I'd rather just own myself and deal with the difficulties of that, which no, it's not easy. Yeah, it's really hard, but it's a lot easier than facing the ramifications of like what we're looking at now. That's been going on for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Is there any part of you that feels like it was a step in the right direction? You know, it was perhaps like a milestone in history towards freedom and away from collectivism. You know, for the first time, perhaps individualism was going to be honored in some kind of manner.
Completely. I mean, to step away from the notion of like divine right of kings. Like there's this one person that God chose and he has this authority over everyone. And if you don't do what he says, well, you can die. We can kill you because you didn't obey. Like the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, these were huge. Well, I think the Declaration of more than the Constitution, but like both of this whole period of history was revolutionary. It was a big deal. And I think taken to its logical conclusion, you really get the voluntarism we're talking about. But it was, it was a different time. It was 300 however many years ago. And they're still just people. And I think that's the biggest, I think like this concept of the founding fathers, like to me, that's so creepy. Like it's so mythological. And you have these people who are just mortal human beings. They grew up in families. They lost loved ones. They lost siblings. They had difficult times, but like they're immortalized. They're treated like these better than us people. And they were incredible people in a lot of respects. They were also very flawed. They were just people. They died like everybody else. They had injuries just like everybody else. They had grief. They had loss. But there's like this way that we idolize these people with power. They had great ideas. Like Thomas Jefferson to me is one of the most fascinating people because it seems like he knew slavery was wrong and yet he kept engaging in it. He knew that the Louisiana Purchase was unconstitutional, but he did it anyway, because he was human. Like I don't feel the need to like demonize these people, but I also absolutely will not enshrine them as these gods, the way that it's done.
Well, and I think what's interesting too for me that's never sat right with me is like I just don't understand. Like I question the kind of person that like wants to go after a political position so they can have some sort of power to decide how other people should live. Exactly. Sure, some people I think may have some positive intentions, but like this institution is so flawed. So I just don't trust politicians. Like I just don't trust them. I don't trust institution. I think certain local stuff can be valuable, on a local level, but like generally speaking, I'm just like, fuck off.
Yeah, right. Right. I don't trust anyone who thinks they have all the answers for millions of people, whether that, and it's not like the question of voting and voters is really interesting here because I don't think millions of people who believe in this system and think they're doing the right thing, I don't think they're like inherently evil, but there is an aspect of that personality and that consciousness that like they want to control people. And maybe they don't frame it that way and they don't see it that way. But this idea of like, well, the government said I can vote and my voice matters, which means that I get to make decisions for other people. And they're not thinking that consciously. They think this is like the best, most just, most free system in the world. And they're participating in something virtuous. So like, I don't like to demonize voters so much because they're victims of the programming. But you look at politicians and you're like, oh my God, like imagine thinking that like, I know what's best for all these people. And some of them, I don't think they couldn't care less. They just want the power. They want the privilege they get.
I only demonize the voters that don't put the sticker on and take a picture of themselves with it and post it on social media. Just so you know.
Yeah, they're not doing their civic duty. They're not doing their part. They're just doing nothing. Well, and I think too, like, not to go off on a tangent, but like that idea of like when you talk about these ideas of like maybe the government is not legitimate, maybe democracy is not the peak of civilization. The biggest response I get is, so you'd rather do nothing? You just want to do nothing. Like, I didn't say that. I just said using government is not the solution. But to me, it's really a reflection of how deeply ingrained this paradigm is. Of people think that if you're not participating in the government system, you might as well be doing nothing. Like, there's a whole world out there. There's a whole variety of tactics and strategies and tools that we can use to enhance our freedom and to help people. But they have their blinders on because of government, because of the way they've been conditioned to believe, quote, society should work and function.
Yeah.
And they're being programmed. They're being like with Edward Bernays. I mean, every 4 years, it's like the same freaking thing over and over again. The same types of conversations happening online, the same types of hysteria happening every 4 years. You go back until, I mean, how long? And it's the same thing. And what I've noticed, it just feels like there's just this yo-yo, this back and forth pendulum between like one side or one color winning and then the other color getting fired up, and then just like the same shit over and over again.
Right. Well,
like Republicans, Democrats, like.
And it's so short-sighted because, like, say I'm a Democrat and a Democrat wins, like everyone after Joe Biden won, not everyone, but like so many Democrats after Joe Biden won. It's like, oh, okay, finally, we got rid of fascism and I can chill now. Like, no, you can't. There's going to be another election. And you will jump when they say jump, and you will panic again the next time. You know, like, people are freaking out. Oh, Donald Trump. Okay, but like, you could have predicted that 4 years ago, that you weren't going to keep your power. And if you weren't, what did you think? He was just going to have like a decades-long dictatorship, and that's in service of democracy? Like, it makes no rational sense. Like, there's no point in trying to like make sense of it, but it's inane.
Now a short break from the episode.
Hope you're enjoying this episode, everybody. Just a shout out to our amazing community, Friends of the Truth. Continues to grow, continues to evolve. Love our members, love the conversations taking place in there. And I just cannot emphasize enough the incredible value of this community. We have a basic tier now, which is priced at $17 per month. And we have the premium tier, which is $39, where you get access to the Telegram community and to our in-house facilitators and practitioners. We're covering so much now between German New Medicine, human design, evolutionary astrology, birth work, death work, like me and Yerasimos are in there, nervous system work. Honestly, it is the ultimate starting point for an individual who's interested in self-development and connecting with a community that really, 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 really gets it. 6 calls a month on the basic tier for $17 is absolutely insane. So if you're a fan of this podcast, if you want to not only support our work, but get insane value for supporting what we do, then Friends of the Truth is the place to be for sure. Head to friendsofthetruth.co or hit the link in the show notes. And we, plus our members, would be so stoked to meet you, hear your story, get to know you, and continue to grow together.
Back to the episode.
I mean, Sophie and I were in a training for a somatic experiencing training, and right when Biden was announced as the winner, and like, I mean, the message, the chat on the side, the conversations, everyone was like, I've been in a trauma response the last 4 years. I can finally sleep. Like, people were just like,
wow,
exalting themselves and each other. Yeah. Like, this is amazing. And it's like this, it's pretty interesting to see like that your life.
Yeah.
Like your day to day depends so much on who the president is.
Right.
Like, whoever it is really gives a shit about you. Mm-hmm. And how much of your day-to-day is really impacted by who's president. Like, if I look back at my last 30, 40 years, I can't think of much of my day-to-day. You know, there's certain policies that impact things, but it's just like, it's pretty wild to me to observe.
Yeah. I remember seeing posts when Biden got elected, like, the entire world can take a deep breath now.
Yeah. No. I remember hearing someone out my window yelling, "We have a new president!" Like, so excited. And it is like the rational question is like, well, how much does this really affect you? Like, my God. But you look at some people and it really does. And I think you mentioned the nervous system. I think that's such a huge piece of it, because the way the propaganda and the programming and the media work is they keep you in a constant state of activation and fear. Your limbic system is firing all the time. And that's supposed to be for like actual, like real threats, you know, like, and I understand these people view it as a real threat, but like a tiger isn't chasing you. Like you're not literally on the verge of death, but when you're caught in that stress, fight or flight response, you're not functioning optimally. Like you are not in a grounded place. And I think by design or just as a consequence, that really serves the system, because when you're caught in that fear, you're not rational. And as we talked about, you're looking for somebody to save you. You will do anything to not have to feel that way, because it's very unpleasant to be caught in fight or flight all the time. And like COVID is a perfect example.
Oh yeah.
People were like terrified. Like I feel so terrible for children who were raised by parents who were freaking out about COVID. Like their nervous systems are going to need some serious help. They're fried. I mean, I can't speak in absolutes. I don't like to do that. But like, I would bet that a lot of children who grew up with parents freaking about COVID all the time are going to be more prone to anxiety. They're going to be more stressed in general. And then as a consequence, they're probably going to have more health problems.
Yeah, it's an accurate assessment. And then you throw on top of that, you know, being forced to wear masks for 2, 3, 4 years. Even now, I mean, I was just traveling the other day and I was in the airport and I saw like a young family, like 2 kids. They're probably, you know, 5 years old and 3 years old, and they're still wearing a mask. And like, what does that do to your development? What does that do to your ability to recognize social cues and facial gestures and things like that? But, you know, we have our friend and someone who's been on the podcast before, Irene Lyon, who we respect for somatic work. My wife, Sophie's trained with her and continues to train with her. And like, I think she made a post once, or I can't remember exactly, but she's like, you can trace back so many of the world's problems to dysregulation. Like, imagine if I could just like snap my fingers and then have the world population that just have built greater capacity within the nervous systems. Like, what would that do to the world? Like, I know it sounds crazy to say, but if change starts at the individual level, truly, and we're not waiting for some hero, or we're not focusing on collective change, like if you're able to interact with your environment, with the people in your life, you know, with the news that you see on the television in a more conscious way, what is that going to do? And so like, and I think we're on the same page here, and it's something Joel and I preach about very often. Like, the solution lies within. Like, you're putting all your focus and energy in the external world. Now, I'm not saying put your head in the sand, put your earmuffs on, be la, 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 nothing's happening, there's all good in the world. I'm not saying that. But like, charity starts at home. You got to take care of your vessel. You got to take care of your mind and your being. And then that kind of trickles out externally into the world, instead of bypassing that and going, no, let me get lost into the crowd and let me be an activist. You know, I mean, the shadow side of the activist is, you know, there's some lack of control within you and you want to gain control, or you want to create change, when, you know, the idea of changing within is scary. Yeah.
And I think that even applies like I eat very clean. I don't like to eat food with pesticides. I don't like to eat food that are products of this whole corporatist corrupt everything. And like, that's important to me. But I see a lot, it becomes like a compulsive identity for people. And yes, it is a form of rebellion to take care of yourself. Absolutely. But I think, again, like without that piece of like the deeper inner work, like I will like eat healthy, please. Like, do not eat foods that are like laden with pesticides and all the things that we all, it's generally, I assume your audience, it's a baseline of like these things, you know, are not ideal. We don't want to be eating a bunch of seed oils and Roundup ready crops, obviously, but like do that and be healthy. But also it's not just that. It's not just like the external choices you make. It's, as we're talking about, it's, you can eat all the healthy food in the world and still be completely dysregulated. And yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and I notice it. I mean, I think so many dysregulated people I've met are people that are hardcore health freaks, you know, or hardcore spiritual types. And it's just like, sometimes a person who's just living their life, like, whatever, I had a cheesburger, and they're just like, they're chilling. Like they're navigating stress in a healthier way. They're more resilient. So again, it's like, I'm not saying go out, eat unhealthy food. But like, you have to take a look at like the entire picture. You have to look at it from a holistic standpoint. And really, first and foremost, like, how are you navigating relationship? You know, how are you communicating? Like, take a look in the mirror and go, oh man, I got super triggered. Like, why did I get triggered? That wasn't even a major thing that I should have got triggered over. So it's like, you know, again, it comes back down to personal responsibility, self-responsibility in that regards.
Yeah, it's still a projecting externally, for self-responsibility, like, whether it's chemtrails or seed oils or whatever it might be. It's like, oh, this is the reason that I am the way I am. This is the reason that the world is the way it is.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like viewing things from a holistic standpoint requires really the right side of the brain, requires this activation. And so if anything, to develop more empathy, to develop more connection, like we need to engage with the world more creatively, So like my encouragement is always for people to find ways to be more creative, bring more creative joy back into your life. What are the things you love doing as a child or as a kid? Like what lights you up and excites you now? And like, even I think about the face masking, like a big component of the right brain is being able to read human faces. And there's a direct correlation between this and having empathy. So I think about this whole masking, like that's very indicative of a left brain dominated society that wants to cut away the creativity, wants to cut away the empathy, wants everything just on the precise, the focus, the immediate, without the holistic picture. And so there's so much that plays into this on that level. It's just so curious to observe, for sure.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. I've gone down a route of neuroplasticity of the nervous system and changing the brain. And I read this great book called Hardwiring Happiness by a neuroscientist. And unsurprisingly, it turns out that like a lot of like these Buddhist principles of like empathy and compassion, it's not just Buddhism, but like these really benevolent qualities and mood states and mind states, heart states, really spirit states of like compassion and empathy, connecting with others, like those are actually very good for your brain. Like they rewire your brain to make you more predisposed to happiness. So it's like, to me, it all makes perfect sense. Like, of course. But when you are caught in that reacting, like the reacting state, the reactivity, it's difficult. I've been there. I'm still there a lot of the time. Like I'm practicing, I'm learning, I'm rewiring my brain. I'm trying to change my disposition because I can see very clearly that a huge problem in the world is the lack of empathy and compassion. And to me, the government inherently is the opposite of compassion and empathy, like forcing people to do things they don't want to do, regardless of how they feel about it without consent. That's anti-empathy. Like it's like, I refuse to care about how you feel. And you see it reflected. So I don't want to just blame government for everything because like that gives it too much power. Like we aren't entirely dependent on the state and what it does. Like we're not products of the state, but there is quite a connection there.
Yeah, and I think the external tyrant without is reflective of the tyrant within. Like how powerful and potent must be that aspect of some people's psyches that's like so demanding of them constantly. Like that's what that's home for them. That's what they're comfortable with. And so it's like that seems so normal, having someone clearly tell you what to do, tell you how to live, whip you, punish you, tax you, whatever it might be. Like that's safe.
Yeah. The master-slave dynamic, that's playing out, I think internally and externally in that regards.
Yeah.
But I think what's so important is like we talk about an expanded consciousness. Like, you can be angry, you can be upset, you can be self-righteous, and can you tap into the compassion?
Right. Exactly.
It's not like, oh, let me just be on my high horse and talking shit to everyone and being self-righteous.
Right.
Or ignoring that and being like, well, this psychopath is just a psychopath because of like, you probably experienced some really horrible things. Like, of course, we can sit there and come to that realization. Like, man, like I can only imagine. Like that is part of compassion. Understand, like, man, what did a person go through to behave the way they behave? But also to be able to stand on 2 feet and to set a boundary and be like, no, I won't stand for this. I don't consent to this. You will not speak to me this way.
Right.
I will not do what you tell me.
Exactly. And I think that's actually something I've talked about a bit because I found that people who view themselves as dissidents, who view themselves as, opposing authority and opposing this current paradigm. Like you mentioned compassion, they're like, no, I'm not going to have compassion for my oppressors because they view that as giving in and submitting. But like actually both can be true. You can have compassion for how hard it must be to live like that, to either like believe in the system or like whatever got you to a point where you created this power, like, yikes, it must have been rough. Like whether you were born a sociopath, like that must be hard too. Or like whether you've had a bunch of experiences that predisposed due to disconnection and power lust, whatever, like you could acknowledge like that's really hard. Also, it's really hard for me to feel how I feel and have the beliefs I have in this system. And I'm not submitting. Like it sucks. It's really hard. And like, you don't get power over me. And I think there's a disconnect there in the awake circles where they believe compassion is a hindrance, when in fact it's so much of the solution and it's so essential to freedom.
Yeah, that's right. And a spade is a spade. Like, yeah, I've got a compassion and your behavior is morally wrong. And that's on you to fix and adjust.
Exactly.
And again, like that's something that starts at home. Like how much compassion do you have for the self? You know?
Yeah.
I think
they're back. Sorry to interrupt.
You're good.
There might be some commotion for a few minutes, minutes.
Or easy.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I just think about like the lack of compassion externally, and it's obviously always harkens back to the individual. Like what's happening within someone's own psyche? Like how hard are they being on themselves? You know, and I feel like this is the root of all of it. Like there's so much violence committed against the self on a daily basis. So if we want compassion externally, again, it has to start individually. And you know, we always talk about like, oh, there's a great awakening. Like I don't see it that way. Like the work of the individual to get themselves to a point where they have self-esteem, where their nervous systems are regulated, like that's one person at a time. You know, it's not like all of a sudden the masses are going to have this realization and all this work's going to be done for them.
Yeah. And I think it's also like, even just becoming aware of that is a huge step. Like the way you speak to yourself is, we're not even conscious of it because it's so default the way it's programmed into us. And again, like that's reflected back out in the world. Like sometimes I see people when they leave me mean comments, I'm like, oh, you're talking to yourself or your mom or your dad. And I've been that way too. Like I really have to pause and check myself before I interact with people on the internet, because it's like, well, who's talking here? Like, is this my traumatized inner 5-year-old? Is this a 12-year-old? Is this like, who is it? Is this actually me speaking, or is this a reaction to something that maybe actually has nothing to do with the person I'm fighting with on the internet?
Well, yeah. And we have many parts to us. And that's the thing, is how many people have enough of the capacity within themselves to stop before they actually just follow through with a message or with saying something.
Right.
Just, I mean, what I do, this is my tactic. If like I get highly triggered, like I just pull out like my notes and I just start writing something. But then usually I'll go back to it and delete the entire thing or edit it by 80% or not even send anything at all.
Same.
And so, this is where the emotional intelligence comes into play. It's like, like, what do you have self-control? Like, do you have sovereignty, within yourself, where like someone can say something to you? And by no means am I sitting here saying that I am the most evolved person with this. Like my wife
he says that offline, not online.
Yeah, triggered. But like I've come a very long way, when I think about, how I used to communicate online or get into controversial, subjects. And, I just ultimately don't really care anymore about engaging. Like I don't need to convince someone I'm right. Or to be self-righteous. I do what I do. I say what I say. And if you like it, like it. If you don't like it, I'm too busy like living my life.
Yeah.
I can't spend an entire day having a back and forth argument with a stranger on social media.
Exactly.
I just don't care.
Yeah. Like, and that's like when I go on Twitter these days, because I was banned from Twitter. So I took several years away from Twitter. And I kind of wish I hadn't rejoined, because every time I go on, I just see it's like children having tantrums. And like, sometimes I don't want to, like, it's not wrong for a child to have a tantrum, but I just look at all these dysregulated people and it's like, they're just crying out for someone to tell them like, they're okay.
Yeah.
That like, they're enough, that they're not wrong or bad. But it's like, I just see it back and forth and I'm like, oh man, this is not the way, you guys.
It's not wrong for a child to have a tantrum. It's wrong for an adult to have a tantrum.
Right, like on the internet. And to think that like they're actually coming off really cool and like really informed and right. You're like, wow, like we're living in different realities right now. This is outrageous.
It's a combination.
Not to mention that like people would not say 99% of the stuff they say online to someone in person.
Yeah.
It's just like this. They think they're hidden behind some super secret protective veil where all of a sudden they have a permission slip to speak like however they want. And this is what I mean. Like, it's a slow process, but I feel like a trajectory has begun to move to people starting to like dive deep into their own psychology, their own somatic intelligence, through the parents, that are now deciding to raise kids more consciously, homeschooled, more so away from the state, away from the government, and parents that are doing the work to build a regulation within themselves and to have compassion for themselves. Like, this is the only path forward to change and to evolve, is for us to become softer on ourselves, and then our kids become softer on themselves as well, and there's more self-love is cultivated as we continue through this journey and through this path.
I don't know that I have anything to add because that's just so correct and articulate and profound.
All right, next question. Will Biden or Trump be the one that saves us?
Well, I've got a question. I've got a question around this, Carey, because where is Trump positioned? Because I still can't get past this reality that there's no way in hell that Joe Biden is the most popular president of all time and received 80 million votes. Like, it seems very obvious that whatever someone thinks about Trump, that this previous election was rigged on some capacity and some level. So it's like, is this so complex and so well thought out that they decided to make it so obvious to the mainstream that we're even going to rig this election in favor of Biden for some other complex stuff to be going on to manipulate people? Like, I don't understand, this situation.
Well, okay, to be fair, there's always fraud as far as I can tell. Like, to me, the entire idea of elections are frauds. Oh, that's funny. I wanted to make a video and I forgot what the angle was. That was the angle. So thank you guys. You just brought it back to me. The whole thing's a fraud. But aside from that, like, it's the corruption is so glaring. They don't try to hide it. Yeah. It's whatever happened in that election, something about it was dishonest, like very obviously. From start to finish, it was dishonest. I think either way you cut it, it's sad because say it really wasn't a result of fraud. Like, there was fraud here and there, but like Biden really won. Well, there are a lot of people who were convinced that they were going to be sent to death camps or like concentration camps if Donald Trump won. Of like, we're going to have maybe not all of them, but they believed we were going to have proper fascism if Donald Trump won. And again, like, that fear motivator, that can be pretty powerful to get people to go out and hold their noses and vote for Joe Biden. Because like, he doesn't really have enthusiastic supporters, but there are a lot of people who thought they were doing the virtuous thing by voting for him. That's assuming that there was no fraud and nothing was rigged. And
Yep.
But on the
youth vote they talk about too. The youth came out to vote.
Oh yeah, for sure, all for Joe Biden. Like, just
the euthanasia vote.
Well, but then to me, like, the sad thing is the flip side of that is like Donald Trump got that many votes. Like, oh no, like, he's a perfect. I don't want to call him controlled opposition because I think that implies intent, and like, who knows what's going on with that guy? Like, I'm not saying he's working for, some power that is, what's the correct grammar on that, for a powers that be, whatever. Like, but he's certainly not a real lover of freedom. Like, you can look at his policies, see what he did in office. Like, he appointed the swamp and like, he waged on, people love to say he's anti-war. He was not anti-war whatsoever. He escalated bombings. He killed more civilians. He was bombing Somalia. He was bombing Yemen. And they're like, well, he didn't start any new wars, to which I'm like, do you see the problem with that, though? That like, you live in such an empire that a guy who didn't start a new war and just exacerbated the existing wars, that's considered anti-war here? That's insane. But that's a tangent. Like, point being that so many people believe that this guy is going to save them. Do they? Some of them, absolutely. Others, it comes back to that lesser evil argument. Like, it always comes back to this. It's just like, well, but look at what the system gave you. How long have people been voting for the lesser evil? Like, as long as I've been alive, for sure. It's this constant just like, well, but if it's the other guy, it's going to be worse. Okay, so it's like between bad and worse, and that's how we end up here. So for me, it's like, there's fraud. It's all fraudulent. Like, the entire notion of government is fraudulent. Like, that's a given, as far as I can tell, which I think is why I struggle with like the Trump supporter angle of like, it was rigged, it was stolen. I'm like, you're so close and you're so far though. Because you still think the solution is to have a master who's going to solve your problems for you. Like Daddy Trump, he's going to give us freedom and he's going to protect us and he's going to save our country and he's going to get rid of these other people that we don't like who scare us. So it's what's also frustrating too is like, we're not going to know the truth until some files get declassified in however many decades, right? Like, we still don't even know what's going on with JFK. Like, what really happened? People think they know and people have ideas, but those documents are locked up. And it's so interesting to me because you look at the CIA and the files they've declassified are so bad. Like, they're so corrupt. They are horrifying, the things the CIA has done. And that's what they're admitting to. Like, that's like,
why do they declassify them?
That's a great question. There has to be some psychological angle to it. Like, that's how they operate.
Like, to demoralize.
Do they have to? Is there like do they have to?
Yeah, I have no idea.
That's a good question too.
I just come across randomly. The CIA is declassified this information,
Right.
and now we know these things.
Right.
And then, like a couple decades later, the same thing happens. But I don't know what the
Right.
intention is or why it does it. Like why they do it. Like
Right.
you know,
Because I know what this is actually a good question. I don't want to act like I know, but I know what the church committee, like that was when their infiltration of the media came out and some very corrupt things they did. And I wonder if there was a consequence of, like, if that's a consequence, that there is some order for declassification. I don't know. That's a genuine question, like something I'd like to research. But the other angle then is like, well, you mentioned like to demoralize people of just like, oh my God, look how powerful these people are. Like, what could we ever do? I think that's also totally plausible. And maybe it's both.
Yeah.
But like the things these people have been up to and the things they're willing to admit, the thing, like you can just go on their website, you look at their vaults and you look at the documents and you're like, oh, these people were like just plotting to fake a terror attack and kill civilians so they could blame it on another government so they had cause to invade. Interesting. And they're admitting that. That's just common. Well, it's not common knowledge, but that's just available information now.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And like, I don't think it even matters. Like, I feel like the masses are just in such a state of apathy that like, there's so much that we know and no one does anything or cares or responds appropriately to Twitter files, JFK files.
Yeah.
I mean, the president's son is a heroin injecting, coke snorting pedophile. No one gives a shit. The sitting president. It's like, there's no real response to all this stuff that comes out anyway.
Yeah.
I think if someone came on CNN tomorrow and just laid out a bunch of like truth, people would be like, oh, whatever, I get it. Okay.
Dude, even if there was
but Donald Trump.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if there was a universal broadcast on every TV, every radio, every internet, all of a sudden pause and someone made an announcement about some big thing, like it would just dissipate, like the next day. It wouldn't even fucking matter.
Yeah.
No one would
there'd be
like shit.
There'd be a week of like social media like posting and then the next thing. And the next thing would come up.
Yeah, always another distraction, another thing to react to. And it's a bit like the boiling frog thing. Like I remember when Watergate was like the biggest scandal. Well, I don't remember, I wasn't alive, but like from what I understand of history, that was one of the worst things that ever happened was Watergate. Or like Teapot Dome with, what was that, Herbert Hoover or Harding? I think it was Harding in the 1920s. Like, I don't even know the specifics, but that just seems like the most amateur corruption you could imagine. Oh, they stole some documents? How innocent. How sweet. Like, you think that's bad? Like, how quickly it deteriorates and how much people are willing to tolerate when it just keeps coming and coming and coming. And it becomes like, And it's interesting too, because as I'm saying that, there's this dichotomy of like, they have these huge reactions, and yet that it still doesn't really change their fundamental beliefs about it. It's like, you can look at all this corruption, you can look at how much evil and violence and abuse there is and be aware of it and still be like, well, yeah, but it's the best we have.
Yeah. Well, even people like, when you think about Israel, Israel, Palestine, I know you've commented on that, but like people who were just like, saw how Netanyahu and Israel treated citizens during COVID, and Netanyahu literally coming out and saying like, yeah, I'm totally cool with like our population being lab rats for Pfizer. And like people being aware of that, but then like being so pro-Israeli government, with things happening like this, there's just such a disconnect within individuals.
Well, and I think part of it too comes back to that sentiment, that slogan of, quote, we are the government. Because when people really believe that, and I went to public school, that was deeply ingrained in me. Like you learn civics and you learn how democracy works and you learn that your voice is heard every 4 years and you have power and blah, blah, blah. Like you look at the actually slogans, like I think your voice, your vote, like that's the ABC election marquee, because I do a lot of video editing for these videos. So I'm always pulling stuff like that. And it's insidious and it's everywhere. But when that's kind of the standard belief, regardless of the government, it gets a lot harder to question it because that's your identity. You identify with this institution. So it's very difficult to consider that maybe, like, yes, there's some bad things and yes, they abuse things, but like to question its legitimacy, like as a whole, that's really questioning a part of yourself. And that's really hard for people.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I don't know how much you've studied Ayn Rand or if you read any of her work. She made the proposition that she believes the only role of government should be to protect individuals from physical force and to defend individual rights on that level. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a really nice idea, but in practice, like, no, like that's because it's I think when your authority is rooted in physical force on a philosophical level, like that's hypocritical and it doesn't make rational sense. It can't work. But then in practice, I mean, you look at the Constitution and it was supposed to be the most limited government that ever existed. And I understand that in America, yes, we still have certain freedoms that have not yet been infringed upon entirely. I mean, they're pretty much all, whittling away. But compared to other countries, yes, there is still more freedom. But to start out the way that it did, it's like the basis of the Constitution is restricting the government. Or like it lays out the rules, like what's the Bill of Rights? It's saying the government can't do this, it can't do that, it can't do this, it can't do that. Like, because these fundamental rights are so important. And if I have gotten the Constitution totally wrong, like I'll own it, like whatever. Someone corrects me if I'm wrong, but that's the general gist of it, is it's constraints on the state. And here we are, not that long after, like a couple hundred years is really not that much time in the scope of human history. And we've ended up with like a massive government compared to what it was, quote, intended to be. And then you look at the people who first, like George Washington and the Whiskey Rebellion, John Adams and the Alien and Sedition Acts. These are things that directly violated the founding principles, if not the actual letter of the law. And the people who founded the country are violating it. So like what, like just forget the values and the the morality of it, just from a practical standpoint, how is this workable? It's not. It failed like instantly.
Why? But like, yeah, I'm curious, like what's, like, how do you correct that? Like, is there like, obviously, like to me, it's like, the problem is rooted in bureaucracy. Like people, they're so attracted to these positions because there's so much incentivization for like power and control and money and all the rest of it. So like, how do you remove that incentive where it's like, it's not appealing to want to be a politician, not appealing to want to like, be in the government or hold these positions and stuff like that. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's going to be so interesting how things unfold. It's going to be so interesting.
That is absolutely true. No matter what happens, it's going to be fascinating to watch and observe. And I think we're in a unique position because we don't really have a horse in the race. Like we're just watching everybody fight. Like, whoa, you guys, you need to rewire your brains. This is very dysregulated. People are losing it and glitching out. And like, it's interesting because we're talking a lot about emotions and regulation, and there is a lot of demonization of emotions, especially from the right. It's like the facts don't care about your feelings, and these liberals are just so emotional, and that's the problem. Like, well, they are emotional, but it's not the feelings; it's the dysregulation of the feelings. Because as far as I can tell, people on the right are also very dysregulated. They just don't own it. Like they're not aware of it because that's just how they operate, and that's not their fault. Like I've been there, I'm still there some days. Like it takes a lot of practice, but this demonization of feeling, of being really just being human, of having feelings, of having emotional experiences, that's not the problem. It's the dysregulation and then the outsourcing of responsibility for that to these politicians and to these power structures.
Yeah, feelings are important, and feelings provide us wisdom and knowledge. But over time, the thing is, it's the instant reactive emotionality that causes so much trouble.
Yep.
Yeah. It's almost like we've gotten to the point where like this conversation about like government and anarchism and voluntaryism, whatever, it's gotten to a point of redundancy because the answer is you need to take care of yourself. Yeah. Take care of, the space where you are, your family, your home, your psyche, your nervous system. What else can you do? There is nothing else that you can do to enact change other than to heal yourself, help yourself, be a creative, passionate human being. And that's it, And
connect with others that share your values and then, go from there. Yeah.
It's all fucked. All right, cool. Deal with your own shit. That's it.
Right. And it's like, you can view that as like, oh no, it's all fucked. Or you can view it as like, oh, it's all fucked. Like I do have power. I can do these things that are actually going to have a measurable effect on my life and those around me and those I care about. And yes, it is pretty heartbreaking to learn that this system you were taught is the peak of civilization and it's your voice and you are the government. It is heartbreaking to learn that that's not true, but it's also so liberating because you're no longer tied to it and you're not dependent on what it may or may not do for your happiness and your well-being.
I think we should call this episode, Yes, It's All Fucked. Get over it. For real. But there's so much freedom in that because like, wow, now I can allocate my energy to something that really matters. Now I can go spend the time to learn what I actually value, what I actually want to nurture and cultivate in my life, what experience I really want to have without having this dictate over me,
Yep.
In start of last year, 2023, I was born in Sydney, lived in Sydney my whole life. I live in Mexico now. We moved over here. It just feels like, unless I'm super detached, from what I've gathered, like people don't have the same relationship with the state. Like no one really fucking cares. No one's as invested in what's going on a political level. Like people just trying to like live their lives, feed themselves, and enjoy the beach, have a few tacos, you know, and it's like that relationship with the state. Oh, what's going to happen? What's happening next? You know, the whole the theater of it all. It's like maybe the production value is just nowhere near as good. And that's why, like in the West, like so much investment has gone into the production of this theatrics of it all to draw us in, to magnetize us. Whereas like that's not as prevalent here on that level. So it's the production machine that needs to go down.
Well, the media power in the US, you know, for so long, stronger than the rest of the world. Now I think things are shifting now as, you know, globalism kicks in and everyone has access to phones and social media. But generally speaking, I agree with you. I just think that the production and the potential for, you know, like television, all these different channels that the US had for so long and people sitting in front of it and being propagandized, you know, I think it's different than in other, you know, countries, you know, for however many decades.
Yeah. And I think too, like for so long, the United States had this presentation of being really functional. Of, you know, like generations before us, like they had more economic opportunity and prosperity. So it wasn't as glaring. It was like, well, of course the system works. Like you can send your kid to college on a 1-person income. Like things were very different then. And
my dad, you know, leaving Greece and all the immigrants that came here, like, well, I could work hard and like build a business and make a great living and provide for my family. Like, cool, I'm heading to America. I want to have the American dream.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was more free. And like, we're talking about that boiling frog and the incrementalism, like it gets worse and worse and worse. And there was still corruption at the time. Like I'm talking about like at the start of the country, like when America started with they were politicians, really, like George Washington and all these founding fathers, like it was corrupt then. And it's just gotten more and more and more corrupt. Like that's just the nature of power. But I think even up until quite recently in the scope of human history and American history, it could still be perceived as a really great and working system. Even though there was corruption, there's always been corruption. When I studied history, that was a very common theme. And I didn't view it that way because at the time I was like a big government supporter, but I still have all those facts and details from my education where I'm like, oh yeah, that's a pretty clear pattern. Like,
well, and I think also people go, oh, it was corrupt back then, you know, like in like the old ancient archaic times, but not now. We're evolved. It's the modern world now, and people are better. Like human nature is fucking human nature. Like it's like we haven't just experienced this like complete evolution of consciousness where all of a sudden everyone in government like means well.
Well, it's fascinating because if you read like the Tao. Was it Tao Te Ching? Like if you read that, it's all true. Everything that they said about rulers, about like when rulers use more force, you have a more chaotic population. Like that was true thousands of years ago. Whenever it was written, it remains true today. Like people were observing that long ago and it's remained consistent.
Yeah, the Tao Te Ching is potent. That's probably one of the only Eastern texts that I recommend personally. I just wanted to comment on something like, yes, there's all right, sure, there was corruption with the founding fathers, with the Constitution, with all of it. And on some level, like the values and the principles of the Western world, of America, led to so much prosperity as well. It led to so much innovation and invention, the airplane, the skyscraper, all the rest of it, etc. So it's like not to like boo-boo the entire premise or the intention maybe. You know?
You get to see like with the amount of freedom that was allowed, you know, that people did get to enjoy because of the intentions of the original government. Imagine if we had that to the maximum.
Because what it offered was that man is free to think. You know, you're free to use your own mind, use your own productive effort to create, to support your own life and to see what's possible beyond that, to get out of survival and to get into thrival. It was the first time that was offered on that level. I think.
And it was revolutionary. Like it's like I love American history. That was my primary focus in school because it's such a great story, you know. And like, of course, parts of it aren't true, but like there was more freedom than most parts of the world had ever seen outside of, you know, like much smaller, decentralized, like more remote places, as far as I know. And so much happened because of it. There's a great book called The Discovery of Freedom by Rose Wilder Lane. And she talks a lot like what you're talking about how people in America were free to just experiment and to survive and to innovate. And I think there are a couple like historical errors in it. So like, but they're more just like details. The actual philosophy of it is incredible. And it's so inspiring again, like, because yes, we can get all doom and gloom about how corrupt everything is, or we can look at the flip side of that. Like what we were just talking about of like, oh, we can't depend on the state. Awesome. That gives me so many more options.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of like some of the attitudes of Rand as well, and some of like, you know, the interwoven idea of Atlas Shrugged, you know, and how much has come with that freedom. And you know, she foretold everything that would bring the system down in terms of the bureaucracy. You know, when men traded by with power instead of you know real productive effort and productive capabilities. Yeah, it's anyway. We're here. You know, we're here.
Yeah.
This is the collapse. You know, it might not be how people expected it. It might be slower than our preconceived idea of an empire collapsing.
Right.
But it's been collapsing. It's still collapsing. It's collapsing at free fall speed, really, when you can take a higher perspective and witness it. You know, we're not in the rebuild stage yet. You know, maybe on some level we are. Yeah. But to me, it's an amazing time to be alive. We're witnessing this system that held such a stranglehold for so long on people's psyche, like being demolished in real time. Like even through the COVID era, like a huge chasm has been created between people's idea of government before then and where it is now, you know, and there's a lot of good that's come from that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else, bro?
What are you currently excited about?
I'm excited. Honestly, so much. I'm just happy to be alive, man. Like I'm like bringing it back. Talking about all this inner work that's become it's been a part of my life for many years now, but I've entered new territory with like this nervous system brain rewiring. It's incredible, like to feel I hate the word regulation. It sounds like such a government term. You got to regulate, but like to just be more in flow, like with the universe, with myself. And then that makes me more excited to get to, like, I get to talk about this too. Well, like I'm recording a podcast with you guys and having this conversation about these things that matter to me and that like set my heart on fire and that like bring life to my eyes. Like that's incredible. So like, honestly, I'm excited for the election because while it's going to be difficult and like I get to practice my patience and my meditation practice as people start coming out of the woodworks to comment on the election, like cool. That means I get to talk about it too. And I get to reach more people as much as the social media platforms allow me to, but like, cool.
Oh yeah, that's so much creative material for you.
Exactly.
You thrive in an election cycle. Yeah.
Exactly. That's when I really shine.
Yeah.
You have that election glow happening right now.
Yeah, my body's gearing up. It knows. It's like the cycle has come to pass. The 4 years have gone by. It's time.
Can you believe it's wild that 4 years have passed?
It's insane, dude.
Yeah.
You know, and what's happened in the last 4 years. Just think about our life. You know, I mean, I met Joel in early 2021. You know, we met online, and it just in the last 3 years, like what's happened. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, I'm excited to see how things are going to unfold with this election. Like for one reason, I'll enjoy the entertainment of it.
Right.
You know, just to see. But you know, I'm excited with what we're creating, you know, and I think that's the name of the game. Like to anyone listening, and you know what Joel and I talk about often. Like, what are you building? What are you creating? How are you taking care of yourself? How are you, living according to your highest values? How are you living your truth and speaking your truth and drawing in people who share your values in that regard? Doesn't mean you have to like not communicate with people that don't agree with you on everything, but still like, get clear. Like what kind of life do you want? You know what I mean? Like, and go out there and do it and deal with the shit that's going to come up, and heal yourself and deal with your issues. Like, what else is there? Like, focus on your issues, not Trump's issues or Biden's issues. Like, please. Like, I know so many people that just, I know everything going on geopolitically. I know everything that's going on about Trump and this and that. It's like, your fucking own house is in disarray.
Right.
Your health is in disarray. Now, how you are as a human being and in your relationships are not ideal. Start there, okay? Yeah. It's just easier to deflect from that level of personal responsibility and get lost in, the outer world.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, if the goal of the system ultimately is to like destroy inspiration, you know,
Yeah.
it's to destroy that feeling of being lit up to wake up in a new day and cool, I get to be alive and get to creatively express myself and get to, you know, take this internal thing and manifest it externally as something amazing. That's an essence of me. And that's what we need to bring back, like more than anything else. But this, if you're feeling completely burdened, weighed down, you know, blanked out, you know, you dread going to sleep. You've got to wake up for the new day. You know, you're so desperate for that coffee before the day's even begun. You know, it's like things need to shift. And with consistent effort, bit by bit, it actually doesn't take that long. You know, things can turn around pretty quickly. But I know I'm preaching to the choir with our audience. And yeah, whoever needs this, hopefully they hear it.
Yeah. And that's also what's so exciting is this conversation we're having, the things we're talking about, it's expanding. More people are turning toward themselves. They are asking these questions that we're talking about of like, well, how can I empower myself? How can I take care of myself? And I see it happening more and more. Like when I first started, like over a decade ago, this wasn't a question for me, and it wasn't something I saw in these circles. But I think there's more and more emerging of this external, political, chaotic, corrupt world, like awareness of it with that more inner consciousness and awareness. And to me, they're inextricable. Yeah. Like I think I said at the beginning, like I can't separate the external and the internal freedom. And I think more and more people are walking down that road, which is really exciting.
Well, there is no separation. There is no self without world. There is no world without self. Like they can't exist without each other, you know? So there is this paradigm that exists no matter what. And, you know, you're going to affect the external, start at home, you know, like we've said many times throughout this podcast.
Yeah.
What are you working on now? Do you have some videos that you're getting ready to unleash to the global population?
I do. I have like 3 that are like ready to go. I just haven't posted them. Like I'm waiting for because the news cycle is so crazy, right? Like I put a lot of work into these videos, so I like to post them at an opportune time. Like there's no point in posting a video about X subject when Z subject is trending crazy and nobody's paying attention. But I'm sure I have some sort of like internal wiring that's like, oh, you can't post it now. Like for sure, that's a good reason. Just keep sitting on it. So I'm working on that too. I'm working on being cool with like posting my fiery opinions because it's like I'm taking a break. So it's like I gotta like put myself back out there. But I'm in a very good creative flow right now. I'm working on all kinds of videos and I'm feeling very inspired. So I look forward to dropping those pretty soon.
Amazing. Yeah, we got booted from YouTube in 2022 or something like that. But like we've been thinking about whether it's worth like rekindling, whether things have changed a bit, you know, or we come at it at a different angle. So maybe I'll get some tips off you later to grow a YouTube channel properly.
No, don't ask me. Mine's been frozen since the bans. I cannot grow that channel. It is so shadow.
Gotcha.
It's crazy.
Yeah, you just put your video, you make your videos and you post them on just social media and they kind of go viral that way, right? Or do you have like a place where you host them?
No, I just put them on YouTube. Like nothing happens to me on YouTube anymore. And I've just come to terms with that. But Twitter and Instagram are still pretty decent for me. Cool. Although I heard that Instagram now has like they're blocking political posts. So you have to change your settings. If you want to see them.
There's a setting now.
Yeah. So that may affect my reach when I finally post something again. We'll see.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much for your time. So appreciate you being here and sharing this dialogue with us. Just in terms of like anything you'd like to leave our audience with, in terms of how they can find you, connect with you, or any final message you might have, feel free to go for it.
Yeah, just thanks for having me. This is such a big part of my experience as a human right now, like as a soul on this planet. Like everything we're just talking about is becoming so much more prominent in my life. So I love that I get to talk about this with people and that you guys are like, we're on the same frequency as someone from Los Angeles might say, or on the same vibe, but like it really is true. And it's so inspiring and so encouraging that like I'm not leading this effort by absolutely no means. I'm just another person making these discoveries, but it really is exciting to know that other people are too. And we're not alone. And I think that's a big thing to remember is it can really feel like we're alone. Like you look out at the world and you take in all this media and you take in the news stories and it feels like, oh my God, I'm the only person who sees through this, but you're not. You may not be in personal touch with these people in real life, but we are everywhere and we're growing and it's really cool. And you have the power within yourself to improve your life and the lives of those around you. So it's easy to forget and I forget it a lot, but it's also easy to remember. So thank you guys for talking about all of this. And you guys can find me on all the usual platforms for now. We'll see what happens.
Cool. We'll put those platforms in the brief for people to easily be able to find you and connect as well.
Cool.
Everyone, thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for the wrap up. Take care. And that was awesome.
Yeah, it was great, man. I love our conversations when we get to just rap about things and have this fun dialogue, and it just bounces back and forth. And yeah, man, I mean, Carey's great. Like I said in the episode, like, I loved her videos when I first came across them years ago. And yeah, she's cool.
Yeah, man. It really feels like we've gotten to a point now where, like, the whole government conversation, the corruption of the government, it's like that energy doesn't have anywhere else to go. Like, there's no fixing this. There's no nothing. Like, that energy for the sane person has to be directed to, one's own life, relationship with self, relationship with the primary people in your life, cultivating a vocation, a creative workflow. It's like, that's it. We get it. Cool. Got it. Now what?
Yeah.
We're there now. Yeah.
Like, I agree. Like, no, there's more corruption. And now this person's going to be the one that has the knowledge and is going to save us because they're going to get into office. And like, okay, like, sure, there's changes and things that can occur. But it's like the same old story, man. Like,
yeah.
Like, check yourself. Like, you need to have the self-awareness to know when you're just like going off and giving your energy to this stuff. And then you're trying to convince other people, like, no, you have to listen to me. I'm right about this stuff. This is what's happening. Like, don't talk to me until you're putting the energy into taking care of your life and healing yourself and being more connected with, your loved ones and your partners and your children. Like, I don't care. I don't care about this other shit. I don't care what you read on some blog about what's really happening with Trump or what's happening with Biden or what's happening with Q. Like, I just don't care personally. Like,
yeah. And if you're at the point where you get this completely and you're like, okay, no external authority, then you're at the point to, like, claim a kingship in your own life, claim queenship in your own life. Be the benevolent leader that you need in your own life, in your own home, with your own family. Like, what does that look like? How can you really begin to involve and embody, the royalty within you, and be that director and set the tone accordingly. Like, get out of the immaturity, whether it's emotional, whether it's psychological. Like, we're no longer children. Like, let's move on to stepping into that now, because that's what's needed. That's what's being called for us to be activated on that level. So I'm excited to see people, step up in that regard as well.
Yeah, and then stop giving their power away to these other people and projecting that kingship and queenship on others and claiming it, like you said, for themselves. Of course, it's going to look differently depending on the individual. Some people are more wired, or in this lifetime, they're meant to be more in a more front leadership role. And some people maybe are a little bit more behind. But at the end of the day, yourself. And like, maybe you're more behind the scenes. Like, but what is that? What's that unique thing within you? What's that unique gift within you? Like, how do you want to bring it into the world?
Yeah, whatever it is. What's the most matured and refined version of your unique being and your unique essence? How do you claim the reins to a great degree?
Yeah. Like, if you're a parent, how can you be more present with your children? How can you heal yourself? So then, they're learning, or they're being conditioned in some ways by a healthier individual. So like, these are things that need to be aware of.
You need to shine the light of your consciousness on your kingdom.
If you're in a relationship and you're sitting there judging your partner, like, turn that gaze inwards. Like, what can you shift about yourself? Like, maybe because you ultimately have control. Well, hopefully you have more control over you making changes in your life than being like, well, only if my husband changed, well, only if my wife changed, then I would X, Y, Z. And it's like, well, you don't have control over that, but you have control over going, hey, listen, I can take responsibility for how I communicate to my partner. I can take responsibility for how I take care of myself so that I can lessen the amount of friction and the amount of emotional volatility that exists in partnership.
Yeah.
It's
the projection is, it's very childish psychology, And man, I really get the feeling, like, since 2021, since we've started this podcast, since we've having these conversations, lot of the audience that's been with us from the beginning. I just get the sense that people have moved on so much more. They get this stuff now as well, you know, like on a much deeper level. Like we're moving and evolving and traversing collectively on some capacity together, you know, and you can sense that even with our colleagues, even with our peers, how much more prevalent the nervous system conversation is on all levels now, you know. And personally, I'd like to think that we played a role in that on some capacity, in some degree. I feel like we pulled some levers, you know. But it's awesome to witness, man. And time is going to go on. Things are going to continue to evolve and grow and progress, and other elections are going to happen. You know, more people are going to become more aware of certain facets. Like things are moving on. You know, it's not like you need to get out of the thing where it's like, oh, everything's going to change immediately, and you know, everything's going to all of a sudden suddenly shift, and the world's going to be beautiful, etc., etc. It's like, no, things are shifting, time's moving on, things are getting better, but it's like you need to ride that wave. You need to constantly assess: am I riding that wave, or am I sitting on the shore? Am I being a passive bystander, allowing the stagnancy and the status quo to maintain in my life, or am I riding the waves of change? And you know, I think that's a really important question we all need to ask ourselves. And that's it from me.
Yeah, man, I agree with what you're saying, and I think people just need to take a look. All of us, you know, like what do we want in life, and you know, what's serving us. You know, I get it. If you have a podcast or you're a writer and you're talking about geopolitics and this and that, great. But like, if that's not your life at all, and like there's only 24 hours in the day, and you have a family and you have kids, and you keep saying that you want to be healthier and you want to go after the things you want to do and learn how to play an instrument or whatever the things that you really want to do, like, put your attention on that. Maybe don't go down all these rabbit holes about what's happening on the other side of the freaking world that probably doesn't have anything to do with your life. You know, so, you know,
well said, man. Yeah.
And I don't have anything to say. I talk about the same stuff often, but it's like repetition, I think, is important with some of this shit because.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure, dude.
Anyways, y'all.
Thanks for listening. Yeah.
Thanks for listening. We really appreciate you. And also too, like, because it helps us out. If you listen to this podcast on Apple, please write us a review. You know, if you, you know, it would be really important for us. If you're on Spotify, write us a review. If you watch on our website, you know, drop a comment, you know, like, follow wherever you're at. It really helps us with what we're doing. And then other than that too, like to engage in conversations like this and to connect with us. Like we have Friends of the Truth, which is our membership community. I mean, I think you all know about it if you're listening, and we do 6 calls a month. We have the most awesome Telegram private group with like 20 plus sub threads where we talk about all these different topics. It's just awesome, you know? So you can check all that out at friendsofthetruth.co. If you have any questions about that, you know, find me on social media, shoot me a DM. I'm on Instagram at @_Yerasimos. Send us an email at the podcast, like whatever you want to do. We're here and we want to connect with our listeners.
Yeah, I agree. Like we're here, we're easy. And I feel like, you know, we can point to you. If you're interested in self-development, if you're interested in growth, like we're happy to direct you and point you to where feels good and where feels right. You know, hereforthetruth.com is a great founding base. There's even a coaching and offers link. If you press that, you know, there's a bunch of good prompts there for you to start this journey on some level. So yeah, I got nothing else. Yo, thanks for listening. Peace.
Smoking mirrors, I'm seeing through the illusion. Waking up in a time they think you're in a delusion. Somebody set the alarms, cause they be too busy snoozing. I'm in a DeLorean. Fast forward and never